XRP and XLM don't move like the rest of the market. They don't dance around with meme coins. They don't chase hype cycles. They don't try to trend on Twitter every single morning. Instead, they sit in the background, quietly, consistently, connecting pieces of global finance like they're stitching a new nervous system together. And it only becomes obvious in hindsight. This is where it gets emotional for a lot of long-term holders. People who have watched XRP survive courtroom battles, political attacks, misinformation storms, being labeled dead, delisted, mocked, doubted, and yet every single time it stood up again. Every time someone tried to bury it, it came back stronger. You don't survive that kind of pressure unless the foundation is unreal. And XLM? That one hits differently. While XRP was fighting giants, XLM took another path. Slipping into underserved markets, into remittance corridors, into real-world access points that matter to everyday people. It didn't make noise. It didn't brag. It didn't wave a banner. It just built. Brick by brick, partner by partner, integration by integration. And that's why so many investors feel a strange emotional bond with it. It's the kind of project that reminds you of someone who works hard behind the scenes while everyone else is trying to look important. But right now, today, this moment, something feels different. Something feels aligned. It's in the charts, sure, but it's also in the timing, the partnerships, the institutional signals, the regulatory shifts, the liquidity corridors, the infrastructure upgrades. It's like the universe is putting puzzle pieces together faster than anyone expected. For months, maybe even years, we've been saying that these networks would eventually become the backbone of a new financial landscape. But now, it feels like that future isn't far away anymore. It feels close, almost uncomfortably close, like you can hear the gears turning behind the walls. You look at XRP and realize, this thing wasn't built for trading. It was built for settlement. Fast, frictionless, scalable, compliant. The kind of thing only governments and banks care about, until suddenly the whole world needs it at once. And when liquidity starts flowing through those rails at scale, the price doesn't go up normally. It re-rates, it recalibrates, it jumps from one category of valuation to another because the entire purpose of the asset becomes different. XLM has the same energy, but in its own flavor. It's not trying to replace banks, it's trying to connect them. It's trying to connect the unbanked, connect the remitters, connect digital money with real-world money. And now with stablecoins exploding, on-chain rails getting regulated, and cross-border payment bottlenecks getting worse by the day, XLM feels like it's been preparing for this exact moment. But here's the part that scares people in a good way. When these kinds of assets move, they move together, not always at the same speed, but with the same direction. Because they solve the same category of problem. And the problem they solve is on fire right now globally. The world is dealing with collapsing financial rails, outdated banking systems, currency volatility, remittance friction, and an explosion in digital assets. Every government, every institution, every major payment provider is scrambling for new infrastructure. And that's why you can feel the pressure building around XRP and XLM. Because the timing is no longer sometime in the future. The demand is now. There's also that eerie moment, and maybe you've felt this too, where you look around the market and realize everything else feels noisy, loud, distracting. Meme coin pumps, influencer drama, flashy charts, clickbait predictions. But when you zoom out, only a handful of projects are actually aligned with the direction global finance is moving. XRP and XLM just happen to be two of the clearest examples. That's why long-term holders aren't panicking. That's why whales are accumulating quietly. That's why the on-chain signatures look different. The kind of accumulation that doesn't care about weekly volatility. The kind that prepares for a long-term structural move. And I want to say this carefully because it's not about hype, it's about pattern recognition. Every major asset that eventually made a massive, unexpected move had a moment like this right before it happened. A moment of silence. A moment of weird calm. A moment where retail got bored and institutions got active. That's exactly what XRP and XLM look like right now. Calm but charged. Quiet but loaded. Still but not really still. You can call it intuition. You can call it pattern recognition. You can call it experience. But something in the market is shifting. You can feel it. And for the first time in a long time, XRP and XLM look like they're not waiting anymore. They're aligning, positioning, coiling. Because when payment rails move, they don't move slowly. And it feels like we're closer than anyone realizes. There's this strange shift happening that most retail investors aren't even noticing. It's almost like the spotlight moved away from XRP and XLM on purpose. Like the market is trying to distract people with noise while something enormous grows quietly under the surface. And if you're paying attention, really paying attention, you can feel that the silence is not normal. It's strategic. It's the type of silence you get before a door opens. The type of silence that feels intentional, not accidental. Because the truth is this: XRP and XLM were never designed to live in the hype cycle. They were designed to flip the entire financial plumbing of the world. And right now, you can almost see the outlines of that happening in real time if you zoom in close enough. Think about what's been happening these past months. Governments are scrambling to regulate stablecoins. Banks are shutting down old payment corridors. Cross-border transfer fees are being questioned everywhere. Emerging markets are demanding faster, cheaper rails. The IMF is talking about interoperability. The G20 is pushing for instant settlement frameworks. And while everyone else is screaming about meme coins, the infrastructure quietly getting positioned behind the scenes looks a whole lot like XRP's model. And a whole lot like XLM's mission. That's not a coincidence. That's alignment. And alignment is always the final step before impact. Here's the part most people don't understand. XRP and XLM don't need to win hype. They need to win timing. And right now, the timing couldn't be more perfect. Look at XRP. The lawsuit didn't kill it. It refined it. It hardened it. It forced it into clarity while most assets in the market still live in regulatory fog. XRP came out of that storm with a legal definition most crypto projects would kill for. You don't survive a fight with the SEC and walk away with clearer positioning unless you were built for bigger things. And I know people get bored waiting. I know the charts look slow. I know retail wants fireworks. But markets don't move based on emotions, they move based on readiness. And XRP looks ready in a way that feels uncomfortable. Like something that's been held down for too long and is about to be allowed to breathe. It's the same energy you feel when a dam is full and the water starts pressing against the edges. Quiet, controlled, but powerful. Now look at XLM. Its evolution is almost the opposite story but somehow leads to the same destination. XLM didn't have to go to war with regulators. It focused on corridors, African corridors, Latin American corridors, Southeast Asian corridors. It built the rails while everyone else argued about who would own the train. And today we're living in a world where remittances are exploding, on-chain money is becoming mainstream, and stablecoins are being adopted faster than most people expected. That entire wave plays directly into XLM's hands. What you're seeing right now is two different roads leading toward the same intersection. One road built through institutional resilience, the other through global accessibility. And here's where things get interesting. Both XRP and XLM are showing the same patterns historically seen right before a major move. Low volatility, suppressed price ranges, whale wallet accumulation, reduction in sell pressure, corridor activity increasing, developer updates speeding up, liquidity pools expanding quietly, sentiment flatlining while fundamentals strengthen. This combination is rare. And when it happens, the move that follows doesn't come in small steps. It comes in one sweeping motion that looks obvious only in hindsight. People don't realize this, but utility assets don't give slow warnings. They snap. They reprice. They jump from one valuation category to another because something fundamental changes in how the world uses them. Think of it this way. You don't slowly adopt a new global financial rail. Once it works, once it's connected, it gets integrated rapidly. And XRP and XLM are the closest thing crypto has to financial rails built for scale. But let's go deeper emotionally because a lot of people holding these assets haven't just invested money. They've invested hope. They've invested belief. They've invested years of patience. They've weathered every dip, every doubt, every news cycle, every troll, every XRP is dead headline, every XLM is going nowhere tweet. And something about this moment feels different for holders because the world is finally catching up to the problems these networks were built to solve. For the first time, the environment matches the mission. The demand matches the technology. The world situation matches the design. It feels like both assets have been early their entire lives, and now the world is finally late enough for them to be right on time. That's the feeling right now. That's the pressure building in the charts. That's why so many analysts, even the ones who ignored these assets for years, are finally looking again. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you're here listening to this right now, feeling that same tension in your chest. That strange mix of excitement and calm, like you're watching destiny inch closer. Because XRP and XLM aren't preparing for a pump, they're preparing for a roll. And once the world finally turns that switch, the move won't be gradual. It'll be defining. A before and after moment for both assets. And you can feel it, even if you can't explain it. You don't need some insider interview, some leaked document, some dramatic headline. You just need to zoom out not on the chart but on the world. Everywhere you look, the financial system is cracking. Payments are slow. Settlement takes days. Remittances are broken. Banks are suffering outages. The entire global system is screaming for an upgrade. And when a system is that desperate, it doesn't experiment, it adapts fast. XRP and XLM are built for that exact emergency. The world is basically standing at the door of a new financial era, knocking harder every day, and these two networks are the only ones that seem to be listening. Everything they were designed to fix is now becoming impossible to ignore. And when a technology's purpose suddenly becomes the world's priority, it doesn't stay in the background for long. That's why you feel this weight in the air. Because the truth is, most people don't understand what a real major move actually looks like. They expect candles. They expect hype. They expect fireworks. But real moves, the ones that change the market, don't come from hype. They come from pressure. Quiet pressure. Sustained pressure. The kind of pressure building under XRP and XLM right now. And look at the psychology. This part matters more than people realize. You can always tell when an asset is close to its defining moment because the emotional climate around it changes. XRP holders used to be loud. Now they're calm. XLM holders used to be hopeful. Now they're patient. When a community shifts from excitement to certainty, it's usually because the evidence is no longer predictions. It's reality. You see it everywhere. Institutions testing tokenized assets. Banks experimenting with instant settlement. Central banks exploring cross-border digital currency models. Fintech companies moving away from legacy rails. Governments opening discussions on interoperability. Every one of those trends points in the direction XRP and XLM were architected for. It's almost scary how aligned it is. Like these networks weren't early, the world was late. But this is where things get emotional because for so many holders, the journey hasn't been easy. It's been years of being early. Years of explaining what others didn't want to hear. Years of watching meme coins explode while utility coins stayed in the shadows. Years of waiting for clarity, waiting for movement, waiting for the moment when the rest of the world would finally see what you saw. And now, slowly, quietly, that moment is forming. The signs are subtle but obvious if you know where to look. XRP volume flowing through corridors even during low price periods. XLM stablecoin integrations accelerating. Liquidity hubs expanding. Developers increasing update frequency, not slowing down. Partnerships being announced more strategically and less loudly. Everything is pointing in the same direction, infrastructure readiness. And markets always move after infrastructure readiness. But here's the part almost no analyst talks about. Market cycles don't just depend on fundamentals or charts. They depend on timing alignment. There are phases where the world simply isn't ready for a technology, no matter how brilliant it is. Then there are moments where everything lines up at once. Pressure, demand, regulation, global need, liquidity, sentiment, and technological maturity. XRP and XLM are entering that alignment phase. This isn't about if, it's about when. And the when feels closer than at any point in the last decade. Think about how long these networks have existed. Think about the storms they've been through. Think about how many chains came and went, how many trends exploded and died, how many projects raised millions and vanished. Yet these two are still here, not just surviving, maturing, strengthening, getting sharper, getting more relevant as time passes, not less. That's not normal. That's not luck. That's inevitability. There's this moment in every historic investment where holders feel a mix of fear and excitement. Not because the price is mooning, but because they can sense the turning point before it becomes visible. And if you're feeling that right now, don't ignore it. This is the same feeling early internet believers had before broadband took over. The same feeling early mobile believers had before the iPhone exploded. The same feeling early crypto believers had before the 2017 wave. It's that quiet certainty, that whisper of, this is it. And when XRP and XLM finally make this move, it won't be a small one. It won't be a couple percent. It won't be a slow, steady climb. It'll be a recalibration. Because these aren't assets that pump. They reprice. They shift into a different category entirely. They move from speculative coins into global infrastructure assets. And when that happens, the market reacts violently in a good way. Most people won't see it coming. Most people aren't paying attention. Most people are too distracted by noise to understand what silence really means. But you're here. You're listening. You're paying attention to the signals hidden under the surface. And deep down, whether you admit it or not, you feel it too. XRP and XLM are no longer preparing. They're aligning. They're tightening. They're shifting into position. Because the major move isn't coming someday. It's forming right now. And the people who understand that will be on the right side of history when it breaks. Let me leave you with something real for a moment. Because if you've been in this market long enough, you already know. Most people don't fail in crypto because they chose the wrong coins. They fail because they didn't understand timing. They didn't understand moments. They didn't understand that the market doesn't warn you before it flips direction. It just flips. Quietly. Suddenly. And only the people who were paying attention get rewarded. And right now, XRP and XLM are standing at one of those moments. Not hype. Not fantasy. A real structural turning point. And the strange thing? It's happening in a way the mainstream isn't even noticing. Because while everyone is arguing about Bitcoin dominance, meme coins, and ETF drama, the rails of global finance are shifting underneath their feet. It's like watching a building's foundation being replaced without anyone inside realizing it. Quiet machinery. Silent adjustments. But once it's done, the entire structure behaves differently. That's where XRP and XLM come in. They were never meant to compete with hype coins. Their job has always been different. Boring to some people, but world-changing for the people who actually understand what's going on. They were built to move money, to solve friction, to make cross-border value transfer feel as simple as sending a text. And now the world suddenly needs exactly that. Banks are being forced into blockchain adoption. Not because they want to, but because the old systems are breaking down. Slow settlement times, expensive transfers, compliance bottlenecks, global liquidity shortages. Everything that worked well enough in the old world simply isn't good enough for the new one. So what happens? They turn to the networks built for this moment. You're seeing partnerships pop up. You're seeing central banks experiment. You're seeing institutions quietly, carefully, making sure they're ready for instant settlement systems. And here's the real twist. XRP and XLM are now complementing each other instead of competing. Ripple is handling the high-level institutional layer ODL, big banks, enterprise corridors. Stellar is dominating the retail and SME layer, micro-remittances, humanitarian transfers, stablecoin issuance. Two sides of the same money movement puzzle. Two rails that eventually connect into the same global digital economy. And this is why the next major move won't look like anything we've seen before. It won't be a sudden, lonely pump in the middle of nowhere. It will be the result of global infrastructure quietly falling into place. Then flipping on. And when that happens, price won't bounce. It will repricing. Because you can't value a utility network the same way you value speculation. You can't value adoption the same way you value hype. You can't measure global money flow the way you measure meme coin cycles. This is where things get interesting. You're going to see corridors open. You're going to see large transfers migrate to on-chain railways. You're going to see stablecoins explode in demand. You're going to see governments treat blockchain as a necessity, not an experiment. And each of these forces pushes XRP and XLM into the spotlight. Not because the community talks about them, not because influencers hype them, but because institutions need them. Cross-border payments need them. Real-time settlement needs them. Liquidity bridges need them. Digital identity and compliance frameworks need them. And that's the kind of demand that creates major moves. Not loud moves, not dramatic moves, but deep structural moves that completely transform the long-term value of these assets. So let me ask you something. If you were early to Bitcoin before institutions came in, would you have sold? If you were early to Ethereum before DeFi launched, would you have panicked out? If you were early to Solana before the ecosystem exploded, would you have doubted? Because right now, XRP and XLM are exactly in that pre-discovery zone. Quiet, underestimated, dismissed by people who don't understand what's behind the curtain. But the people paying attention, the ones who look at the infrastructure instead of the noise, they know exactly what's coming. And if you're watching this, you're one of those people. So stay ready, stay grounded, stay focused on the larger picture. Because the move everyone keeps asking about, the one they think will come out of nowhere, it's already starting. XRP and XLM aren't preparing for a major move. They're entering it. And when the rest of the market finally realizes it, you'll already be positioned exactly where you need to be.